Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome all you participants to our workshop on lawn care tips for homeowners. We're happy to share our knowledge with you and help you become more proficient in your lawn care. And we trust that the session will be productive for you, that you will find things that you can apply in your lawn care practices, and that you'll understand why certain practices are recommended, why they work, why they're helpful. Just give you a better understanding of things. My name is Dan Gentry, and my co-presenter is C.R. Phillips. There he is. And we are two of, I think, well over 100 active master gardeners affiliated and trained by UGA that serve Coweta County residents and serve the UGA in its mission of educating the public and just providing services to the public in such areas as gardening. And this is particularly supporting its role of helping to educate people to just know what to do and why to do it and when to do it. If you have questions during the session, you can type them in the chat room, either during the session or right at the end if something comes up. So at the very end of our presentation, CR and I will answer your questions and get to as many as we can in a reasonable amount of time, and that'll probably be all of them. So feel free to ask questions as we go, or ask questions in the chat box as we go along. Note that we have sent a sheet with links to various resources that are that'll be very helpful for lawn care purposes, and has some links to UGA lawn calendars in particular that are very helpful for identifying when and what to do different times of the year. It's very, very explicit. And we'll look at one of those in the presentation, show you what all information it provides. So we'll jump into the presentation. I'll start off first. In the topics we're going to cover are essential maintenance practices, some weed control practices, and a little bit, a couple of the more common disease issues. So our key point is that you can achieve and maintain a healthy turf in your lawn on your own. You don't have to have super knowledge. This is not rocket science. It's pretty straightforward stuff. A lot of what you kind of heard in general, but maybe you'll have a better understanding of what to do and why to do and when to do it. So the objective is for you to develop a good stand of dense turf, which is the best defense against weeds and disease. Depending on the condition of your lawn, this may take a couple sessions. It's not something you just sprinkle stuff on your lawn and poof, 2 weeks, everything's great and you got all grass, no weeds and all that sort of thing. So this is a ongoing objective, ongoing effort. I do want to raise two important cautions about the whole lawn care maintenance. One is it's important to know the variety of turf that you have, not the exact particular cultivar, but at least whether you have Bermuda or Zoysia or Centipede or St. Augustine. Particularly with some of the weed control practices, there's some products that are appropriate for most of the what we call warm season grasses, but Centipede in particular is a bit of an outlier. So it's important to know the variety so that when you're looking at a product, you can look at the label and see if it says don't use this for this type of grass. The basic types of most common types used in our area are the quote warm season grasses, Bermuda, Zoysia, and Centipede. St. Augustine as well, but those are the three main types. In more shady areas, sometimes tall fescue, a cool season grass is used. It's a challenge to keep it looking good in our warm climate, but in a high shade area, it can be appropriate. Sometimes you might even have different variety in your front yard versus your backyard, so that complicates things a little bit there. The other main really important point is you just got to have sufficient hours of sunlight for grass to really thrive. Most of those warm season varieties need 5 or 6 hours of direct sunlight to really do well. And some zoysias, maybe 4 to 5 hours. But without sufficient sunlight, you're just going to have a constant battle with weeds and the grass thinning out. So hours of sunlight is a crucial element in having a good stand of grass. So let's look at our, we'll first look at the essential maintenance practices as our first group of items on the list here, and starting off with fertilizing. Key nutrients, excuse me, in fertilizer is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are typically displayed on the front of fertilizer bags as N, P, and K. And the nitrogen is important for the shoots, the grass that's above the ground. Potassium is particularly important for the roots of the plant, the below ground portion. And, phosphorus is important for the roots. And potassium is just good for all around plant health. Again, those percentage amounts are displayed on the bags. Bermuda and zoysia have relatively higher needs for nitrogen, needs to be fed a little more consistently through the season if you really want to have, super nice green grass. Frankly, the Georgia soils, while they're hard and need amended to keep the roots happy, they do have a fair amount of nutrients, and it's not totally essential just to get grass to grow and grow decently with just existing soil. A lot of the fertilizer bags in recent years have minimized or even eliminated phosphorus, since it's in rainfalls and runoff that goes into streams and lakes, and even off your lawn and driveway, etc., into the storm drains, tends to cause vegetation growth in streams and makes the competition for oxygen with the wildlife and the fish in the stream. So there's been an effort to minimize use of phosphorus unless it's really needed. We recommend getting a soil test that can be done. You pick up a bag or just bring in a sample of soil and put it in little bags and send it off to the UGA lab. And that identifies whether you need additional nutrients, phosphorus and potassium, and how much is needed, so many pounds per 1,000 square feet of lawn. So it's very helpful to know just the condition of your lawn by doing a soil test. It also tells you the pH, the acid level in the soil, and that's important for the ability of the plants to actually take up the nutrients that are in the soil, for the roots to absorb them and take them up and benefit the soil. So Georgia soils are often a bit acidic and often need a bit of lime now and then over time, but a soil test will tell you if that's the case, and also how much pounds of lime per 1,000 square feet to add. Concerning the amounts and timing during the year, a key principle and something to remember here is that apply fertilizer when the grass is, quote, actively growing. And typically they do multiple applications over the year, but if it's, well, we'll get to that. Let's take a look at a lawn calendar. I know this may be a little difficult to see all the writing, but here's an example for Bermuda grass. This is a great source of information. Really tells you what and when, or particularly the when to do various things. So it covers, well, it even covers mowing height, water, fertilization, ideal pH range, when to do aeration, when to do thatch, when to do seeding, if you're going to do seeding a new lawn, or overseeding or sodding, and even weed control, when to do various actions on weed control. So this is one concise piece of information that really, really gives you some great guidance. And you may or not be able to see, but on fertilization, the third heading down, if you look across, it tells a P for possible or B for best months of the year to apply fertilizer for warm Bermuda's a warm season grass. So you see that it's even the month of May, when the grass is really actively growing, is the best time to first start applying fertilizer. Actually, applying nitrogen too early in the spring can be a bit harmful. Either if you apply it really early, it may produce a lot of new shoots that can be harmed if there's a late frost. And it also can contribute to acceleration or enhancement of, or more susceptible to disease if your lawn is stressed and a bit prone to getting some disease. So best to wait. I know the tendency is to get out there when you first see a little green shoot and throw on some fertilizer, but that's really not helpful and can actually be harmful. So again, the UGA website and the sheet that we passed out has calendars for each variety of turf grass that gives a great source of information, and these same on the timing. So back to our fertilizing on application procedures. The best thing that we can say is follow the label. Follow the label, follow the label. Look at the label and do what it says. In terms of the rate of application, you need to generally use a spreader to get an even application, and the rate at which it's applied. So I know it gets a little more complicated, but follow the label on how to apply it, how much to apply, and what kind of spreaders to use, etc. So moving on to our next topic of watering, I'll turn this over to CR, and he'll cover the next couple of maintenance practices.
Yes, good morning. Watering. Yes, you should. So how much and when is really the issue. Ideally, once things get going, and they are going, I just mowed my lawn for the second time yesterday. We've had rain. I live on the north end of the county, and we had about 3/4 of an inch day before yesterday. So I'm not going to be watering my lawn for at least the next 10 days. And that's what I look at. How much water do I need, and how much water am I getting? I've been here in our home for 22 years now, and I've seen some really terrible drought times, and I've seen my lawn just shrivel up and go away. And I thought at the time that I'd lost everything, but as soon as we got some rain, it all started to come back. Bermuda and zoysia both grow from the root up. So consequently, yes, if you give it some water, it'll do very well. Well, how much? Well, about an inch every 7 to 10 days. Well, I've got a sprinkler system. How do I gauge that? Well, sometimes it's just as simple as having a tuna can out there in the path of the sprinkler, and when it's up to about an inch, you can shut the sprinkler off. I think we've all driven past some business or house when it was raining and their sprinkler system was going on. That's just a waste of resources in my view. Anyway, so about an inch. Don't just go out and sprinkle a little water on your lawn and think you've done it some good. You really needed to give it a good soaking, get down in the roots, about an inch every 7 to 10 days. keep your eye on the weather. And if it's getting to be about 10 days, but the weather folks are saying, we got a 70% chance of rain day after tomorrow, you might want to hold off. You might get a free watering. What time of the day? Now, there's two schools of thought, and I think one is finally won out. The idea is that if I water during the day, the water will evaporate and I'll lose its effect. So I'll water at night. Well, the problem with watering at night is that that's when it's cool and that's when all the fungi get active. So now you're creating a situation in your lawn where the disease can actually get a head start and take over. Fungus is in your lawn and in your soil all the time. So just take it easy. Turn your sprinkler on after the sun comes up early in the morning. Run it for an hour or so, or whenever you get your inch of water, and then shut it off. And that way you'll conserve the water, it'll get down into the roots, and you won't promote disease in your turf. Now mowing is the next slide. There we go, mowing, okay. Yes, you want to mow your lawn, unless of course you're raising hay, and then you shouldn't be in this course. That's another course. I've got some neighbors have that problem. They can't get that figured out. But anyway, we're talking to them. UGA says that Bermuda about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, zoysia up to 2 inches, St. Augustine grass 2 to 3 inches. Well, what I do with my lawn is right now I'm about 1 inch, 1.5 inches on my Bermuda lawn. And when I mow it, it looks great. Later on in the summer, on toward the end of June, I'll raise my lawnmower up 1 more notch. You see, the higher the grass is, the deeper the roots grow. And as we get into summer, usually we get less rain, and of course the temperature and humidity is going up. So consequently, I keep my mower now is on the 2nd notch from the bottom. And on my particular mower, that puts the blade about 1 inch, 1.5 inches from the dirt, okay? And that's how I mow my lawn. Frequency, whenever it needs it. Whenever it looks like it's just getting shaggy and I don't like the way that looks, I'll go out and mow. More often is better than waiting 2 to 3 weeks. UGA says that we shouldn't cut more than 1/3 of the height of the grass. Well, if you've got your lawnmower set at the 2nd level from the bottom and your grass is 4 inches tall, you're going to be cutting about 2/3 of the height of the grass. And that's really going to shock the grass and its roots. And it won't like it, and it won't do well, and it won't show well. Now, do I bag or do I not bag? Right now I'm bagging. And the reason is the seed heads have set on my poannual. In other words, this is wild Kentucky bluegrass. And I'm trying to inhibit the spread of that plant throughout my lawn. So I'm bagging those seed heads, and I've got a woodlot that I can dump them out in, and they won't propagate. But once that period of time has passed, what I will do then is change my modus operandi to mulching, and I'll mulch for the rest of the year, and I won't bag it. And it takes a whole heck of a lot less time to mow my lawn when I'm not bagging it. So we've reviewed how often to mow. We've talked about whether to bag or not. Here we have a picture of some poor individual who really ought to have a hay baler out there instead of a lawnmower. But don't cut more than 1/3 of the height. If you find you go away on vacation and you come home and no one's mowed your lawn and the grass is 6 inches tall, set your lawnmower up, as tall as it can go. And it might take you 3 or 4 weeks to get it back down to where you want it to be, but just cut a little bit off each time, no more than 1/3 if you can get away with that. And keep your blade sharp. There's a fella down here. Look at this photo right here. We can see the bottom, the blade is dull and it's just ripping off the grass blades. The blade on the lawnmower is dull and it's just hacking them off. Where at the top, you got a clean cut. Well, these cuts on the bottom can promote disease. So you need to keep your blade sharp. And if you don't know how to do that or have the wherewithal to do that, you could call our office and we could recommend some folks around the county that might be able to give you a hand. Aerating. Oh, army worms. Yes. Aerating. I aerate my lawn in March. I like to get ahead of right at the spring surge every 2 years. I don't have the children. Our children are long gone, and the only thing that gets on my lawn are the squirrels, the birds, and me. So consequently, what we do is we have it core aerated. Now, this is the same kind of aeration that you see on the golf courses. And yes, it pulls up a plug, but that plug quickly disappears. And what you're doing, you're actually drilling a hole down into the roots so that oxygen can get directly into the roots, and it gives you a better stand of grass. And anytime your grass is growing is good. I prefer the spring, and I think that's what the literature calls for, is to have your lawn core aerated in the spring.
Well, can I jump in here a second?
Certainly.
The UGA recommendation is to wait until your grass is, quote, actively growing. So that would be maybe even May or so thereafter, as opposed to March, if that's when you're doing. So I must object.
Okay.
I just mentioned that. And check the lawn calendar again to give some good guidance on that.
And that, thank you, Dan. And why don't you talk about weed control?
All righty. Okay, here's an alternative to aerating. You just tell people to keep off the grass. Nobody walks on it. You less need, doesn't get compacted. Okay, weed control. The general principle is that a healthy, dense stand of grass will minimize your weeds. That's the best defense. So that all these maintenance practices are working towards a good stand of grass. But as we know, even if you have a good stand of grass, those weeds are just out there, the seeds blowing in from wherever, dropping by the birds, et cetera, et cetera. So herbicides are often herbicides, kind of the fancy name for chemicals to kill off weeds. So they're commonly needed. But again, a key principle is just to use the particular product for the type of grass that you have, and that's where knowing the type comes in, and for the category of weeds in your yard. Although most weed killers kill a broad range of weeds. You don't have to identify the exact type of weed for in your yard, but it needs to be safe for your variety of grass and applied at a proper rate. Putting more on to try to kill it off faster or make sure you're going to get all of them is not good, because there's always a little damage to the grass when you're applying the chemicals to the weeds. And you have to apply certain things at different times of the year to be most effective. But again, read the labels about what kind of grass it's to be applied to, and most of them cover a wide range of grasses. Here's a couple examples of, on the top, of winter weeds, stuff that we've seen in the last month or so. Henbit, and then the real bane of lawn care is what's called annual bluegrass, or Poa annua. That stuff is very hardy, hard to kill, and actually is very hard to kill, particularly unless you have a commercial service, hard to kill after it emerges, and it produces a zillion seeds that drop and produce the next season of growth. Then there's dandelions, Carolina geranium, or a couple of the summer weeds that are commonly seen. So you can go chemical free, and over time, this may be what your lawn looks like in the early spring. So we try to minimize the use of chemicals through good practices to have strong, healthy grass. Don't want to use them unless really need to, and use them in a spot manner as opposed to just spraying everything, you're spraying your whole lawn. But they are needed. And one kind of weed control is controlling those winter weeds and summer weeds, I take it back, is pre-emergent. And that's an approach of applying a chemical to the surface of the ground that minimizes, if not prevents, weeds from ever popping up in the first place. It's effective strategy, very effective strategy to minimize weeds either that appear during the late winter time or through the summer. It applies a chemical barrier at the surface of the grass, typically in a granular form. You put it on with a spreader and needs to be watered in fairly soon thereafter. And the watering in dissolves those granules, and they make like I say, a chemical barrier so that when weeds emerge up from the soil, the weeds or the seeds of prior year's weeds are in the soil. So when they emerge up to the surface, that chemical kills off that plant, so it won't, the weed won't emerge. Let's see if that's all I want to say. Make sure I check my notes here. Pre-emergents are beneficial for all grasses, all grass varieties, even warm season, cool season. Pre-emergents are applied in the early fall by say mid-September in order to get that chemical barrier down so that when the weeds start to appear later on, that barrier will be there. So for trying to minimize winter weeds, a application of a pre-emergent fertilizer is best applied in the mid-September. And for, quote, summer weeds, the weeds that we see during the summertime, the best time for applying the pre-emergent is late February. And again, it depends on getting that barrier down before the soil temperatures warm up to the point where those seeds that are in the soil start to emerge as weeds. Again, the UGA lawn calendar gives the best time for applying those, both in the fall and the spring as well. Not yet. Let's see. Okay, that was pre-emergence. Now, what's called post-emergence are weed killers that are herbicides that are applied after the weed has emerged and is growing. Certain chemicals kill what's called broadleaf weeds that have broad leaves, like a dandelion, say, and others kill grassy weeds like nutsedge or crabgrass. Crabgrass is a real common grassy weed. Those are sprayed on the leaves that are actually after the weed has emerged, and weeds, or the killer, is then transported by the weeds through the plant and basically down to the root and kills the plant. You can apply anytime to broadleaf weeds through the summertime, but it's really best to apply when the weeds are relatively young and not well-established root systems. So that gets to an issue of how early to apply it, and start seeing some dandelions and other, quote, summer weeds early in the spring, but the grass hasn't really greened up yet. and applying a weed killer can damage, slow, kind of yellow the emerging grass, particularly when it's young and tender shoots. So it's kind of a trade-off of trying to minimize the damage to the grass that's emerging versus killing off the weed before it produces seed in particular. So it's a judgment call, but there is a trade-off there on the timing. In the really hot, dry summer, the weeds they're not dormant, but they're not as active, so weed killers isn't quite as effective or quite as quick. So again, killing or applying it during when the weeds are, quote, younger is more effective. So the point is, spring application times for pre-emergent and fertilizer are different. Pre-emergent goes on, like say, into February, before the grass, before you're seeing grass emerge and before you're seeing too many of the weeds emerge. But fertilizer, you wait till it's actively growing, more like late April at the earliest, or May. So some of these weed and feed products, while they may be okay for a warm or a cool season grass, for our warm season grasses, there should be different application times for your pre-emergent earlier, and then the fertilizer later after the weeds are actually actively growing. Okay, we will proceed to a couple of disease identifications and control.
Right. Okay. Every year I get dollar spot in my lawn. And they're about circles. It looks like a pony blanket. And I've got these little dead circles in my lawn that are about 4 inches in diameter. And try as I might, they're not all over. They'll just be in little places around my lawn. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, I've learned over time to ignore them, because guess what? They're going to go away. Now, we've already talked about the fact that these fungi are in the soil. So there's nothing we can do about that. Okay, but do I mash down on the big red button or not? Well, what is the disease that I have? What am I looking at? And one of the best ways to find out is to cut a section, say a 4 by 4 inch square section that has good grass and bad grass in it, and bring it down to the office, 255 Pine Road, and let us take a look at it. That will tell you, that will help you identify and understand what disease is present. Dollar spot is one of the most common and one of the least significant. It's just like an irritant, almost like a mosquito. Okay. There's nothing you really need to do. Keep on keeping on, and you'll be just fine. The other one is what they call a large brown patch. And if you've got a small lawn, it can look like your whole lawn is dying. Here's a picture of dollar spot right there. You can actually look at the branches of the blades of grass, and you can see that they're just not healthy. Well, if you continue on with your fertilization and watering programs that you set up, you'll be just fine. It will heal itself. Dan, now if you could go to the next one that shows there you go. This is large patch or brown patch. And if you've got a small lawn, or even if you've got a large lawn, it looks like the whole thing is just going to the devil, and you don't know what's going on, and it looks just awful. Again, the fungus is there. The conditions are right for the fungus to proceed and get into your grass. So item number one, you want to make sure you know what you're looking at. Cut a small section and bring it down and let us take a look at it. Have good grass and bad grass in that sample so that we can see what's going on. Once you've identified it, now you can basically keep on what you're doing. with your fertilization program and your watering program, and the lawn will heal itself. Very particularly, do not water at night. You're just going to promote this. And don't over fertilize. You can make it worse with too much fertilizer. So those are the two things, the three things that I would recommend is let us identify it, do not over fertilize, and do not overwater. It would be a common mistake to think that, well, I just need to give it a drink. Maybe that'll help it out. See, it's turning brown. It obviously doesn't have enough water. No, that's not a good idea. Okay, or, well, maybe if I fed it again, I just fed it last month. Maybe if I gave it a good shot of fertilizer, some nitrogen, maybe that's what we need. No, that's not a good idea either. Let us take a look at your sample and figure out what you've got, and then we can help advise you how to proceed from there. Now, there's one other thing I want to bring up. Occasionally, you will see a singular, or sometimes there'll be 2 or 3 of them together, about 3 or 4 inches in diameter, and it's going to be really ugly. It's going to be slick. It's going to be dark, black, and gray, and it's going to look awful. Leave it alone. Just take your hose and wash it off. It's a fungus. It's going to produce itself. It's reproducing, and then it's going to die off and go back in the ground. Don't worry about that. When you see these others, there's really nothing to worry about either, but don't make the mistake of making it worse. That's the mistake you can make. Dan,
Okay.
would you like to conclude?
All right, yeah. Just on those, the good news about most all diseases is it won't kill the grass. It may look ugly, but generally go away. And there are fungicides that you can put around the edges, so to speak, particularly with that large patch, that will minimize the spreading even further. But don't panic, don't panic. And call the extension office, send us some photos, etc. Help us to identify what's going on. Okay, in conclusion, again, the key point: you can do this. You can achieve a healthy lawn, maintain it. Again, it may take you a couple, several years to, improve your conditions, but it's not rocket science. You just do these procedures, follow the timing of the when to do them and what to do, particularly using this lawn calendar. But just good maintenance and getting a good stand of grass is the best preventative. The pre-emergent applications in the spring and fall are really valuable. And then a watering, fertilizing, mowing through the year is what you do. It doesn't take a huge amount of time. It does take some effort, but just compared to what you spend time and money on maintaining your household, it's relatively small. So it may seem like this, that it is a constant routine, and frankly, that is the case for trying to maintain a decent looking lawn through the year. Now, you can try to minimize your lawn care by just taking out your lawn and just have one little patch of grass. And some places it's good, you may well want to have some large planting areas, planting islands and that sort of thing to minimize some of the acreage of grass that you have, to minimize your mowing. But this may be a bit extreme. Oopsie. Whoa, lost. Sorry there. Okay, here's the contact information for the UGA Extension Office. The email, coweta.extension.uga.edu. Then there is a Extension Office does have a website. The Master Gardeners do have a Facebook page as well. Coweta County Master Gardener Extension Volunteers Facebook page, where we post information about upcoming events and some plant care, vegetables, and a variety of gardening information. So we're going to do a poll, a couple questions. Karen's going to throw up a couple of questions about our presentation just to help us improve our process. So if you could just take a look at that and hit the, agree, disagree on these questions. That'll be helpful for us going forward. So we'll let that stay up for a minute here till we get those that are willing to participate. And then we're going to follow up with a couple of quick announcements about some Master Gardener events, and then CR and I will answer your questions that have been submitted in the chat box. Okay, maybe Karen, you can pull that down. Or you? Okay. And we'll minimize that and we'll move on to and Karen, you want to speak to this?
Sure. The Backyard Association is excited to have Lisa Bartlett, the garden manager of Smith Gilbert Gardens in Kennesaw, bring our April program, which is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Her program will be designing with hydrangeas. There's one for every landscape. Lisa is responsible for maintaining over 4,000 species collections of plants at Smith Gilbert Gardens. She is the member of on the board of the American Hydrangea Society, and Lisa is in the process of what she hopes to become recognized by the collection of hydrangeas. You can register online, or it's on our webpage and our Facebook page for the Coweta County Extension Office and Master Gardeners. So hopefully you can get registered, and we'll see you tomorrow evening with Lisa and Alan Summerlin and Deborah Williams. Our Master Gardeners are over that program.
Okay.
We have another fundraiser coming up. The McGuffey Nature Trail, along with its 6 hiking trails, is located here at the Coweta County Fairgrounds Complex. Master gardeners spend many, many hours each month planting native plants and removing non-native plants and doing various trails improvements. To help with some of the expenses involved, we have a way that you can help by purchasing a brick or a paver to honor a memory garden, which is in the paved part of the purple trail. It's a very nice picnic area, and you could honor a grandchild's achievement, maybe the birth of a grandchild, a memory of a loved one, or even a pet that's passed. We currently have over 100 bricks placed, and the deadline this year is May the 28th. So if you would like to purchase a brick paver, I will put my email in the box. I can email you the flyer. If you're on our listserv, I send it out periodically. And also it is on our Facebook page and our extension website.
Okay. Let's. CR, can you see the chats?
Again,
Yes?
okay. Someone asked probably, how do you know a grass is actively growing? Does applying vinegar work for weed control? Well, you can tell the grass is growing because it turns green. As I said before, I believe I said before, zoysia, centipede, Bermuda, they all grow from the soil, from the roots up. So all that chaff you saw this winter is dead. And that's why very often in the literature, it calls for scalping the lawn on your first mow. So when it starts to green up, you'll see the color change. Now, I've never heard of vinegar used in weed control. Have you, Dan?
Yeah, if you look on the internet, it is sometimes recommended as a non-chemical, eco-friendly type of weed control. From what I understand, I haven't tried this. This is not from actual experience, but I understand from research and reading that it is ineffective, just not effective, and generally not work. And I won't say it never does, but generally not the best approach. And the weed killers, you know, if they're improperly used, they do cause environmental damage, but particularly the one that's mentioned most often is the Roundup type product that kills everything. That doesn't really go in the soil. It gets on the leaves of a weed, goes down, kills the root. It's not as if if properly used, that it's particularly unsafe. So vinegar is, as my best understanding, is just not an effective way of killing off weeds. And really, it might even be somewhat appropriate in a planting bed, but certainly not to just spray or put on a turf grass in particular.
Okay, thank you. Another question. What's the best grass for South Georgia? Well, we talked about all the grasses that we've talked about will work and do very well in South Georgia. The further south you go, though, St. Augustine grass gets better and better. St. Augustine grass, we're right on the northern edge of where you can use it. It really doesn't do well at all below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It goes into dormancy. So in the wintertime or even cool weather, it has a slow start and it can be very splotchy. But once it gets hot, St. Augustine grass is excellent for deep shade. There's a home over in Peachtree City that is, their lawn is all St. Augustine grass, and the whole lawn is in deep shade, and it's a beautiful green lawn when it's warm. So there's that little bit. But down in South Georgia, yeah, fescues, not so much. Fescue is it does well in shade and will do well in the spring, and it do well in the fall. It's a cool weather grass. I've got some neighbors that have fescue, but they're using it in deep shade and they keep it watered, but still in all, it goes into dormancy in the heat of August and July and August. There was another question here about...
Generally, Bermuda and zoysia and centipede would be the two general recommendations. Again, look at your hours of sunlight. Bermuda in particular needs plenty of sun. Some of the zoysias you can get by with considerably less hours, maybe just 4 to 6 hours. So that's some general guidance.
Another question I have, Emerald zoysia, it is splotchy. All treatments have been done by lawn service. Any ideas? My first question is, how old is the lawn? Pardon me. Is it a new lawn? Is it not just, is it just starting? I would think it's just, pardon me. I would give it some more time and make sure that it's getting plenty of water. Of course, right now in the spring, our rain is such, I think we're going to get rain here tomorrow or Wednesday. I would just give it some more time. You know, you can't set your watch by these things, that's for sure.
Certainly, if you're talking splotchy now, it's still greening up, and definitely give it another month of time before you get too concerned. If it's splotchy all through the summer, that's another issue. There could be some disease issue, or watering, or a variety of things. Splotchy is a kind of tough, and there we didn't talk about, but there is another adverse condition for lawns through various kinds of insect damage. And that gets even a little more complicated. That's why we're not covering it. But again, photos, bringing in a sample can go a long ways to try to help identify your problem.
I have fescue. Is watering every 10 days still okay, or more frequently? Well, again, fescue just doesn't do well out in the open sun in June, July, and August. It's going to become dormant August and on into September. It's going to take cool weather to bring fescue back. So I still think once an inch of water once a week is going to be more than enough. Don't you, Dan?
Yeah, certainly watering will help, but fescue, I don't know quite all the science of this, but just the high heat and perhaps humidity as well slows down its metabolism, for lack of a better word, and watering doesn't help that. It's just the heat. It suffers. It isn't able to recharge every day after the damage of the high heat. So watering will certainly help, but it may not keep it 100% green, just because of the physiology of the plant.
Best way to prevent stickers on centipede. Would that have to do with mowing height, Dan?
I'm not sure what is meant by stickers. Now, if you're talking about the seed heads, mowing would keep those down. Unless you have some kind of weed. There's a burr weed that has little prickly sticker things. So you check carefully, get your nose down in the grass and see if there's any weed growth, or whether this is perhaps just the quote seed heads sticking up, which are kind of little spikes. And certainly the mowing, a regular mowing, will keep those down. Although I understand, not having centipede, in late August and September, centipede actually does send out a flower of sorts. It's not a full seed head, but anyway, mowing would seem to be the first application, unless you have some weeds in there that are causing sticky.
And this would be an excellent time to cut a sample and bring it into the office and have us take a look at it for you, or maybe even if you have the ability, take some pictures and send them in, and so that we can properly identify exactly what you're talking about. We'd be very happy to do that. Any other questions? I think we've got them all so far. Okay.
And we, the Master Gardeners and the UGA Extension Office, are happy to help homeowners with all kinds of gardening questions, from vegetables to trees to bushes and shrubs, and we're talking particularly about lawn care. But always feel free to email or call in the office. Again, pictures are often helpful in helping to identify things. So we're happy to help and stand ready to answer your questions at any time. So feel free. Otherwise, been good to share our knowledge. Hopefully you've gained some things you can apply and just understand what's going on better. Look at that resource page of general guidance and the lawn calendars, and go out there and do your thing. So otherwise, we'll sign off for today. Good to have this opportunity to talk with you. So,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye, everyone.